Alright guys, welcome back to our guts build. This is part 2 and the very end, so this is the end result that we're going for today. And keep in mind that everything here is about 15 to 20 times speed. So all in all, this whole project was somewhere around, I think, 15 to 20 hours, and we're going to kind of consolidate that all into these couple of videos that we've made here. So we left off. Things were looking okay altogether, but to start things off today, we're going over all of the skin. So when you're putting down your skin tones, I think it's very important to get actually a good base of pink and red in there first before adding whatever color skin tone you're actually going to go with over the top. So if we're kind of doing a bit more of a light brown skin tone for guts, not something super white, but it doesn't really look like that right now, to be honest. It looks really yellow, it looks really weird, but once we get this dark red and kind of pinkish undertone to it, it's gonna look a lot better. So you'll see here, I get a little bit of that pink in there, I kind of get a little bit of his veins in there, add a little bit of blues and purples, but it really is going to look super pale until we get contrast from a bunch of other colors. So I like to always block in skin first and then do everything else so that you can see what kind of you're really going for. You know, like what does it actually look like? Because when you put two colors together, contrast is really what's going to drive the darkness of a lot of those. And this guy's got a lot of metal, he's got a lot of leather, black armor, black hair, and those are just very dark features overall, and so it's gonna make a lot of these other skin tones a little bit more pronounced. So just gonna kind of go back in here, add a little bit of color, but overall kind of just pick your skin tone out of a bottle. But this is what I mean, this picture here, this is our end result. His skin looks a lot darker, especially in the face, than what you see right there. It's a little bit crazy, but it really is just that contrast at work. So once we get this black hair in there, get the eyes done, that whole entire neckline and face is going to look almost like 2 shades darker than it really is, to be honest. So for this arm wrap, I'm actually trying out the new Speed Paint 2.0 from Army Painter, and this is pallid bone that's going over this wrap, and it is extremely liquid, so this feels almost just like an oil paint, and it runs everywhere. So if you guys decide to give this a try, I think it does look great for dirtied bandage look, but yeah, be really careful. It definitely leaks everywhere, and it is just so much more fluid than any of the other speed paints, so a little bit goes a long way here, but I really do like the way that it catches in the crevices and the grooves, and it really gives a nice contrast. So I think this gives a fantastic realistic look towards the bandages. And then I'm just going to be using the Grim Black, that's just base speed paint, adding a little bit of black ink in it as well to make it even more viscous, and just going around this wrist strap here, or not wrist strap, this like sword hilt wrap, and making sure that everything looks pretty uniform altogether. When you're doing this kind of stuff, you want to use quite a bit, more than you might think, just to get it to run everywhere and be super fluid. But I usually like to test it on the back of my hand or on a paper towel or something, just to make sure before we get in there. Since we did all that delicate work on the skin, we don't want to screw all of that up by just getting speed paint running all over it or oil paints. This is the new leather paint as well from the Speed Painter 2.0 set, and it's much darker than their original hardened leather, but I figured I was going to go ahead and use it here on the arm straps because I did all of the torso straps with the original hardened leather, and if you do too much of all of the exact same material, things just get kind of an uncanny valley look, and it's really weird. You know, no leather or textured natural material in the real world actually looks exactly the same, and our brains have a quick way of picking that out if things are completely wrong. So this torso that you see there on the left, I'm gonna go over all of that stuff with the original hardened leather, which I would say is my absolute favorite color. On this side with the airbrush, we're just spraying in more metallics. This is just going to be standard Vallejo Air Paints steel. This stuff goes on perfectly. It's flawless. I love it. I love it straight out of the pot in a brush or through the airbrush. It needs no thinning. Doesn't need thinning if it's on your brush either. Gets everything in one coat, and it is definitely my favorite metallic paint. So Vallejo Air Paints, their whole metallic range, very flawless. So I definitely recommend. So I've put these video footages together in such a way that is all chronological, and it's the order that I like to go in. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the right or the wrong order. You could certainly do all the details and then do all the skin later. You could mask off certain areas and just blow it all with an airbrush. But I like to just kind of get one thing pretty much done all at once and call it a day. So I'm the type of person that would go in and do all of this like gold work and gold filigree just to get it out of the way, even though I might have to go back and clean up some details later, because mentally it just makes me feel like I've actually finished part of the model. Anytime you do things in an assembly line fashion, it seems to just suck the soul out of things to me. And so I like it a lot more to just get one section done, move on, even if it means I'm going to have to go back to these paints again. Now this is that original hardened leather that I talked about, and I think this is just easily the best speed paint in the original line. If you're able to still get a hold of it, I highly recommend it. It doesn't flow too crazily, and as you can see, it just has this beautiful texture to it. Like, this is just one single pass over my initial white dry brush, or not dry brush, over my initial white airbrush, and it just is so perfect. As soon as this dries, it really does look like real leather. It pops. All the realism to it is fantastic because it is darker in some sections and lighter in others, and it just feels so natural to the eye. So anytime I get a chance to use this, I will. And as soon as the pot's completely gone and this original formula from the 1.0 range is no longer hard to find, it's going to be a sad day indeed for me because I swear by this stuff. But if I keep doing models like this, I'm going to need to use an awful lot of it. So maybe I'll have to make my model choice a little bit less leather focused if I want to keep using this guy. Now, this section here with the daggers is going to be a great example of why we really want that super white undercoat when using any type of paints like this, whether it's an oil paint or a speed paint, contrast paint, whatever you want to call it, or even just an acrylic paint that's diluted down to a glaze. It's going to show through. All that white under layer is going to show through. So the better you have your volumes picked out, your lights and shadows from the beginning, the easier it is to just go over this with one pass. Like as you saw, I just put a single pass over these entire straps, and it looks completely natural just because I've already kind of given it the appropriate top-down coat with a zenithal highlight. Or on models that you want even more textured and more gritty, you could just do a really good dry brush, which is a technique that's called slap chop usually. So if you want to go check out some videos on that, there's some great YouTubers that do have awesome explanations of what slap chop is. But realistically, it's just taking a dry brush, using it to create a whole bunch of texture all over the model so that you have giant chunks of really bright areas in white and deep areas in black. And then when you hit it with a contrast paint like this, all the recesses automatically get shaded in for you. So it's nothing crazy, it's nothing special, but it kind of got popularized a few years ago in mini painting. But I believe it's actually supposed to be like called grisaille painting or something like that is the technical term. So It comes to light a little bit more here on the hair is a great example, because these last little bits that are at the very, very tip, you'll see they're almost gray, just because the edges were very, very white that we put in here when we sprayed his head. And down deep at the bottom, they're going to be super, super dark black, because we never originally had any white paint get on them. So it'll give us this nice gradient, because black hair is never super black in reality anyway. We're going to just thin down our paint quite a bit so that it runs into the recesses, but now not so much that it bleeds all over onto the skin. So just be very, very careful when you're doing the faces of your models. And to be honest, if you have the option and the piece is completely separated from the model, like this guy is here, I would recommend you just do it first. You know, start with the eyes, start with the hair and the face and the skin tones, and get that out of the way first so that you don't spend a ton of time on your model and then you get to the daunting part, which is the face. Here, we're just going over it completely in red, because eyes are actually red. You know, underneath that white, you've got blood vessels, so it's a lot easier to do the whole thing in red, and then just get just the edges and get it in white. And then I'm going to put up a reference photo here of an actual eye so you can see what I mean. We've got this red pink undertone to it, and I've slowed things down now to just about real-time speed so you can see just how delicate I'm going in here and putting each of these pieces in. The white I haven't pushed up all the way perfectly to the edge of the eyelid. We want just a little bit of that pink to show through. And then the black line we're putting in there is super, super small and faint on the edges. And then we're doing little tiny bits of light brown. And I have a very, very fine brush, and I'm just stippling little tiny bits at a time as I get in there. I'm not trying to move my brush in a circular pattern. I'm just putting the smallest little tiny dot in at a time and trying to move it around to the right position. And take your time. This shouldn't be too scary, because at the end of the day, if it looks really bad, you can just go right over the top of it again with the red, and then right over the top of the red with that white, and restart. So it's taken me a lot of tries to get somewhat decent at eyes, but it's not too bad. And now to make it look like he doesn't have just a complete like zoned out death stare, all we have to do is just put one really, really tiny little white dot right off-centered, and that's going to be what's called a specular highlight, if you want to look up any references for that. And it's going to be one of the only sources of super pure white that you're going to put on your model, and it just goes right in the middle of the eyeball, just kind of slightly off-center to wherever his pupil is. And it really just makes everything pop, and it all of a sudden looks much more realistic. Now that we've got that eye in place, we're just going to go ahead and add in a bunch of highlights to the hair as well. Like I said before, you know, black hair is not actually truly just black in the real world. There's a lot of light that shines around. There's a lot of spots where we want kind of a gray or an off-white, so we're going to put a bit of that on his bangs and everything. Then we'll go in and we're going to add some red in here to the brand on the back of his neck. And this I kind of spill a little bit and get everything a little bit all over the place. It's a little bit hard to see, but if that happens, all you really need to do is just dry your brush off, get a little bit of water, and just start blending it in with the skin. So you really can't even tell that anything happened, to be honest, because it's so liquid that it's just super translucent. And if anything, it's actually going to look way more natural, because light is going to bounce off that skin around the brand, give it maybe a little slight glow when you see it in person. And now we're going to go back in and do those specular highlights again on the hair, those super, super bright white spots, because if we're facing this guy straight on, light is going to hit his head straight on, and we're going to get a really nice shine to it. Going back to the other arm here, doing that belt the same color as the other side, because I'd assumed that they were probably made at the same time, right? So we want to keep those straps together. And going to go in and use that pallid bone to also do this bandage, because of course we want those other things to be the same. And like I said, it runs like crazy, so you'll see me actually dabbing it away with the paper towel here, because it is getting all over the place. So be very careful with this one if you guys decide to pick it up. Again, that's pallid bone from Army Painter. It's their Speed Paints 2.0 line. It's really good, but be cautious because it does run everywhere. If you're used to oil paints, it's not going to be a problem at all. Now we just need to add a couple finishing touches to the metal so that it's not all uniform. Kind of add in a little bit of a brass color or a dirty rust to the bolts. And make sure that everything looks like, you know, it might be a little bit more used. It's not all just one uniform steel color. And those little tiny things really add up. Now getting onto the cloak here, I'm just dry brushing the entire thing to add a bunch of texture. I'm not really caring that it's super white because I'm going to go over this later with the airbrush and kind of filter it down with a burnt umber. So I'm just making sure that you can see all of these brush strokes because I want to create some really cool texture because this is clearly a very damaged cloak. And although it's black, nothing is really truly black in real life, just like nothing is truly really white. So we just want to create a bunch of damage to it. You know, if you ever had like a favorite coat or a shirt or something that was black, you'll notice how quickly those fibers get worn down and it turns to like a gray color. So here I am with the airbrush, just kind of spraying things down to make sure that's not bright white and make everything look distressed. So it's a really easy technique that you can use to just make fabric look super duper real. And then all we need to do is just put a little bit of silver on this little clasp, and I'm going to call the cloak done because I kind of want it to be just an accent on the entire piece. Even though it's so huge, I don't want to draw the eye to it. We're almost there. We almost have everything ready to be completely put together. All we need to do now is go back to my favorite color. Clearly it's leather brown. And we're going to do all of his little satchels and sheaths here, all in that brown, making sure to get more of it in the recesses so that you can really see depth and see natural color to it. Once you get all of this in place, all we got to do is glue it onto the model. Finish these last little bits of buckles and then pull everything together with a total filter to unify everything. Since we build things in pieces rather than putting it all on the model at the same time, it's going to look way too clean and weirdly disjointed because all of the pieces aren't quite perfect. Perfect together. They're a little too perfect individually. You'll see what I mean when everything goes on to him here in just a second. So now that I've got this put on, I'm going to glue these pouches in place. You'll see that he's just super perfect. You know, for somebody to just stabbed this guy, that steel is looking a little too perfect and he's just kind of out of place. There's that uncanny valley feeling to all of this. So I'm actually just going in with a shade and I'm adding some dirt, some shadows, some grime into those greaves and making it seem a little bit more used, a little bit well loved, let's say. I'm taking that burnt umber again and I'm unifying the entire piece so that I'm putting shadows back wherever I want them to be so that it looks like we painted this all at one time. You know, we put them all together and we painted it in one go, even though that clearly wasn't the case. We're going to use that same almost opposite of a zenithal to get in there. And then this is it. This is what that final end result looks like. I would say it was realistically about 15 to 20 hours to put it all together. Let me know what you guys think, and thanks for being part of the ride. I hope you're getting some awesome progress done on your models.